This is the Townrootz Podcast, episode number 64.
Welcome to the Townrootz Podcast, the podcast of, about, and for Oakland. No matter if you live in the town, do business here, or are visiting, we have something for you. And now, your hosts, Anthony Wilson and Vincent Hayes.
There's a lot of stuff. Is a artist, cosmetologist, and instructor, and she has a brick and mortar store, which I think just encompasses all the things that she does. So Toshia, good to have you here today.
It is nice to be here. Thank you.
Good. Vincent, how are you doing?
I'm good. Toshia, great to meet you.
Likewise.
So Toshia, why don't we start with you just telling us about your business?
Well, my business, usually when I start talking about my business, people are like, oh my gosh, you're one of those Renaissance women. And I'm like, absolutely, right? I don't sleep because I'm up doing all the things. But generally, right, I'm an artist. I make jewelry, I paint, I draw, I do photography. I'm also a licensed cosmetologist, and I am an instructor at a college as well, and I instruct cosmetology. I own a small brick and mortar in Oakland that pretty much houses and encompasses all of the things that I do. So it's essentially one-stop shop where you can come in and get any type of service that you may need, hair, skin, or nails. You can pretty much purchase anything that might be hanging on the walls, and there'll be plenty of things in between for you to shop that I've created. I've owned my space now for about 8 to 9, going on 9 years or so. And I've been able to maintain that space. And I'm very grateful to just still be in business as an entrepreneur.
So what inspired you to start your business? Kind of what got it started? What was your aha moment?
You know, what inspired me to start my business? I've always been an artist, right, since I was a child. And I've always worked in social services and group homes and community work. Initially, I was injured on my job about 2008. And prior to that, in my work, I had always done hair, right? Whether it was the students or my coworkers and the different youth that I was working with. But when I got injured on my job and was not able to work, which I had never done before since I was 16 years old, that was essentially my aha moment. And I was like, I really don't want to go back to this job, and I'm not able to work right now. What do I want to do? Because it's really driving me crazy, right? Doing absolutely nothing. And like I said, I've always done hair and jewelry and kind of my own crafty things that I normally considered as hobbies. And I was like, these hobbies are sustainable, right? These hobbies are things that are my business. And so being at that disabled moment, I took the opportunity to realize that I didn't want to go back to the job that I was at. It was not fulfilling for me. And let me take the opportunity to officially go to school, get my cosmetology license, and become licensed. And that's kind of how it all started rolling. I always knew that I didn't want to work for the man or be in a 9-to-5 system that did not really feed my soul. So it was the perfect segue into entrepreneurship.
That's a great story and a cool aha moment. And I think so many people can relate to that because a lot of people have hobbies, but they're not making money at their hobby, right? And so at what point did you realize my hobby can be a business?
I think I've always realized that, but I didn't really take it serious as far as this just being the only thing that I do. So literally, once I was injured at my job, I went ahead and signed up for school, and literally I worked for no one aside from myself from 2008 until 9, 10, 11, 12, probably at least 8 to 10 years before being employed back at Laney College as a cosmetology instructor, which is where I got my license at. So it just kind of came back around full circle.
So how did you feel striking out on your own? Was that scary? Were you nervous? Or just did it feel natural to you? Take us into that moment.
Yeah, think that it would be a bit of a lie to say, right, that I wasn't nervous or right, like scared of like what's going to happen. But essentially, being confident, right, in my ability in things that I knew I was capable of doing, right? I didn't have to like pull any rabbits out of the bag. This was something that was in me. So with it being right, coming from my core in a sense, that definitely helped kind of just fuel the motivation and confirmation and validation that I had everything that I needed to succeed, right? If I just stuck with it, made sure that I shared my ideas and talked about it with people and let people know what I was doing, and really be serious about creating a business. The only thing that ever really became a barrier, honestly, was money. Other than that, right, you get over the hump and the fears. And right, they say in business, if you're able to make it past that first 1 to 2 years, right, you know that you'll be okay. So just essentially right having the confidence in my ability to sustain myself by getting out of the mind frame of right hobbies, and just accepting it for being able to create and produce and live sustainably off of the things that come natural to us.
And so that's one thing that we never really touch on when we talk to business owners that we interview. And so the thing that I want to ask is, when you decided to make the move to be an entrepreneur, did you have to give up anything in your life in order to ensure that it would work and then you sustain yourself?
What I had to give up, I would say a bit of procrastination. I probably had to right give up any just doubt and fear, um, in capabilities and right the ability to be able to sustain. Um, but ultimately, I think just letting go of any negative thought, right? Any words that we're telling ourselves that can essentially disable our own ability. I think we could be our worst critics, right? And sometimes we
Hmm.
get ourselves, giving ourselves the hardest time. So just really one of those people who where it's like if I can't change it, I'm not going to stress about it. Right, I'm going to start over again. I think highlighting the fact that failure is okay. Right, it's absolutely okay to try again and or to have to start again and or to have to reformulate your plan. I think just that continuous motivation with that ball rolling is ultimately right what's important and what fuels me.
So it's interesting because I look at who you are, because I think most of what you do is basically the outputs of just who you are as a creative person, as an artist. And so many business owners, they try to like niche down into like one segment of a market, or like how for you being able to be a cosmetologist, to be a professor, to be an artist, to be a jewelry maker, like how do you keep the balance of being able to do all those things well?
It's funny because over many years, like I've gotten kickback in a sense where people want to form you or they need for their processing right for it to be just one thing.
Hmm.
And sometimes people say, well, you do all these things, but like what do you specialize in? Or you can't just do all these things. You need to do just one. And I always say that I would just feel so boxed in if I were right just doing one thing. Sometimes I have a bit of a battle with myself where I try and strategically plan out the things that I'm going to do. Like, I'm going to do right art this day. And on Tuesdays at this time, I'm going to do jewelry. And none of that really works. Right. It just, what I schedule most, right, are my clients for my, my hair services and hair, skin, or nail services and my Laney College schedule, right? Kind of is more concrete and set in stone. But other than that, I have completely thrown my hands up with having to feel like there's just one thing that I do. And also, it's just really fulfilling to have multiple streams of income, right? Residual income, where there are things that you can do or create where without the blink of an eye, right? It's going to make money. And also just being able to have different avenues to be present, whether it's right vending or at events, and different community, gatherings, the Akoma markets, all of those things just are really fulfilling. I'm a busybody, so I'm usually working on 3 to 5 things at one time, and that feels good for me.
That's great. That's great. So I feels like you're always in constant motion. And I think in order for most business owners to succeed, you have to be that way. So you mentioned events and going to different things to kind of showcase the work that you do. So when you set up at an event, how do you show everyone all that Toshia is at an event?
Well, I wish I had a little picture to show you on the share screen, but I'm definitely one of those vendors where you could easily spend 30 to 45 minutes at my space because, right, high and low, there are things, right, from botany and, right, home items, decorative items. I have stationery, postcards, and um, oh my gosh, so many different things that it's also great because there's something for everyone, right? Whether you're a kid, male, female, non-binary, right? Whatever the case, if you're a human, I have something for you. And I think that's also important when creating, like as you say, a lot of businesses sometimes too try and create things as opposed to looking within to what already exists and making that a business. So yeah, having a little bit of something for everybody. My space is full of things that are ever changing. I use a lot of recycled right materials and unconventional places where I go out and buy things that also allow me to have really low to no cost. So that makes it fun for people to be able to purchase things and also for me to be able to make a profit and right be in community and network and right also sustain myself.
Toshia, first of all, I just love that explanation. And I feel like you do a lot of things, but really it's like you are the creative person. All these things are just sort of the manifestation of your creativity. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I recently, and I've probably seen like the last 3 to 4 years, right? I had an aha moment where I was like, we know the common statement of like, if it doesn't feel like work, if it's something that you love to do.
Mm-hmm.
But also, right, my aha was like, this isn't work at all, right? This
Mm-hmm.
is my soul's purpose, right? This is untaxable, right? Like, this is just, like you say, who I am. And I think it's just important, right, for people to tap into who they are, right? What do you
Yeah.
love to do? What
Yeah.
really makes you feel good? And like, just running with that.
So have you had any mentors along the way? Like, has anyone inspired you either in your creative part or your business part?
Yes. Well, I like to say my mom is my biggest cheerleader for
Mm-hmm.
sure. She definitely helps me, right, pack up, wrap up, whether it's at my shop or vending or whatever, right? She helps schedule and, takes off of work to come and assist me. Financially, I mean, honestly, years ago, there were organizations like Women's Initiative. I mean, that was like a game changer for me. That's how I initially formulated my business plan. There are organizations like Akoma, right? And the um, Black Cultural Zone that are really helpful organizations in obtaining business licenses and insurances and things of that sort. Um, Kiva, I that was like one of the only loans that I've ever done in my life, and that was very, very helpful. I'd say my community, kind of like my direct community, has been the biggest kind of financial guiders and assistants. And I'm a really I like to get knowledge, so I will sign up pretty much for anything that comes through the city of Oakland for taxes and all that stuff.
And so, you've been doing this for a while
Yeah.
and you've been successful, right? Because most people can't have a space for 8 to 10 years. So, I mean, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Now, what are the top 3 habits you think make a successful entrepreneur?
Top 3 habits that make a successful entrepreneur. I'd say the first one is finances, strategically planning out, saving, budgeting. Second one, I would say, is self-care, right? Even though I say I'm always moving, working, but I also like to play. And I like to take breaks and I like to get off of the grid and go out into the mountains where there is no cellular service. So I think even in my industry as a cosmetologist and an instructor, I come across a lot of people who are super shocked that I'm heading to go get a massage, right? I'm heading to go and get acupuncture. I'm heading to go to 3 days to, do whatever. And I think that's a key aspect to being able to keep that momentum, is having that kind of self-time. And third thing that I would suggest, confidence. Confidence. If you're not confident in yourself or your ability or your business, whatever it is, whether you're selling flowers or making clothes, if you don't believe in it, if you are not comfortable talking about it or speaking about it or promoting it, then more than likely, no one else is going to be too concerned about it. So I think just confidence and the ability and conviction of the execution.
Yeah, that's so true. Great advice. Thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome.
So we've talked to a number of people that are creatives like yourself, and they always talk about the Oakland community as being a benefit to the ability to be able to succeed. What has been instrumental for you in terms of being in Oakland and starting and running your business for so long?
Oh my gosh, the benefit. Well, one, being an Oakland native, and being born and raised here, there's just a certain soul purpose overall that I encompass, being here, being able to obtain and maintain a business, due to some of a lot of the inequities and disparities that we have in the Bay Area. And especially as an artist, I'm really, really thankful for organizations and groups like the Black Woman is God, who is a group of women of the African diaspora and all artists. And this was a group that I did not know about for years and had just found about probably in the last 7 to 8 years. And just being in Oakland and not knowing about all of these other prolific artists and just all of the history here, I'm a firm believer that we all have everything that we all need. So for me, just constant networking within my community. It just never fails to amaze me who's here, and what connections can be made and different supportive aspects that are present. I just recently got connected with an organization called EBPREC. And this is an organization that is also, just a fueling flame that I'm really, really glad to be connected with. And it just all ties into sustainability and general wealth and being able to obtain the businesses from a space that's within, right, for the people, by the people, and really pushing for situations and spaces and communities that not only are right sustainable, but are also right thriving.
And so you mentioned Women's Initiative, I believe, earlier. And so, what made you go and engage them for support in kind of getting your business started? And what was like probably the one or two key benefits that you got from taking the time to invest in yourself by knowing exactly what you needed to do to become successful out the gate?
Yes, well, Women's Initiative, oh, I don't remember how I was introduced to them, but I remember it being promoted as right like this is a 6 to however long week intensive program specifically for women who are wanting to create any type of business that you can think of, right? So that was really intriguing and inviting. um, Starting with Women's Initiative, right, I knew that I had always done hair, I had always done jewelry, right, since I was young, but I had never had or been introduced to the business aspects of it. And I think as artists and as entrepreneurs, and especially like cosmetologists, right, we're not taught that part of the business. And that's a lot of the things that I had to go out, right, and sign up for and find classes to get the information on my own. And Women's Initiative was the first initial kickoff to really creating and solidifying that business plan. And I'm so happy that I signed up. It was so intense. It was long. Like it was one of those programs where you literally have to lay out your calendar, right? And not schedule your vacations and like literally lock it in and be dedicated, right, to doing it. But I also knew that it was a key component to obtaining right my brick and mortar, or really being serious and presenting this to right funders and going to a bank and asking for loans and things of that sort. And so definitely that program was very beneficial, covering right all aspects, things that I didn't even think of or knew about, that it constituted right to start a business, to maintain a business, and even before and after both of those processes. um so yeah, it was great. It was definitely hard, not hard, like it was it's one of those things where if you're doing the work for yourself, right, it's just a matter of strapping up those boots and doing it. And then at the end, it's so rewarding, right? um,
Mhm.
so yeah, got it done. And right, that business plan completed, probably 30 something pages. I don't know how long it was, but right, that is what allowed me to go to the bank to present myself and what I wanted to do seriously, and essentially obtain my first and only brick and mortar.
That's great. I mean, there are so many people that we talk to that have benefited from organizations like Women's Initiative, and I think that if anybody that's listening, if you're interested in starting a business, I think that should be like one of the first places you start. And so when you got past the point of having a business plan and kind of getting yourself going, what are kind of the things that you picked up along the way that helped keep you going and were instrumental in kind of the success of your business? Because that's just like kind of the starting point, but there are always things along the way that you pick up to adjust for, to be constantly in a positive or progressive state. So
Yes, for me, one of the key factors, kind of prior and to prevent having to think too much about that, was one of the things that I wanted to make sure prior to obtaining my brick and mortar was that, right, I knew that I wanted a space. I knew that I wanted, right, to be self-employed. I knew I wanted to be able to have a space that encompassed all this stuff that I did, but I also knew that I didn't want to have to depend on anyone else. I knew that I didn't want to have to ask for loans and money in places that I didn't have. I didn't want to be like the salon that has the sign up every month that says, booth open, because I'm looking for someone to assist me with my rent payment. And so for me, a key factor was being very stern and clear on the space that I wanted, needed, and was able to maintain, obtain, and sustain. So that was very helpful for me. And moving forward, things that have been helpful have been saving funds. Not necessarily something that I did probably 10 or 15 years ago. But now I've got awesome credit. I've got like 745 plus. I have absolutely no debt. I've taken no loans ever in my life. And the first one that I did was Kiva. And I was a little bit nervous about that. But for the community, supported by the community, funded by the community was a lot different, at 0% interest. And another thing, I really just have found it really helpful to show up and be present at, events and community town halls and different opportunities where you can talk to other people, where you can get support and mutual aid, and really be present in a way where people are able to be present for you.
So, Toshia, as we said before, you've been at this for a while, right? And so you're going along, and then the pandemic hits. What is that like?
Well, the pandemic for me, luckily, was like the total reverse from what it was for a lot of people. One, because I was not choosing to live my life and my business and sustainability around fear. I know there was a pandemic. I still know there's a pandemic and true disease present, but people thought I was crazy, and I was like, how am I not going to work? How am I I'm it makes no sense to me. And say, well, what are you going to do? And I say, well, the cool thing is that as a cosmetologist, we are licensed. And one of the things that we are specifically keen on is sanitation, disinfection, client protection. So those things do not change, Those things are still present. They will get heightened per se. But if I allow the government to dictate for me when I'm going to work and how I'm going to work, I could potentially be homeless or, out on the streets or without money or trying to figure out ways that I'm going to get money to sustain this small business, that I have. And I was one of those businesses where I had my uncles, aunts, all types of folks calling me saying, we look like werewolves. We look like werewolves. Oh my God, can we come and get a haircut? And I'm like, yeah, you can get a haircut, whether we're on the porch or in the space, covered and all, manicures and pedicures. I mean, I think a lot of the shops were closed and people were ecstatic. I'll never forget about a year and a half ago doing one post on Instagram saying I'm doing pedicures, manicures, and it was because everybody, the general shops have been closed. So for me, I'm very grateful, one, through the pandemic, to have been able to stay open, but also to be able to gain new clients. I've got new clients during the pandemic that are still with me. So that was a blessing.
Yeah, and we commonly hear that from a lot of entrepreneurs, right? That, the pandemic came and there was a bad thing in general, but their business actually thrived.
Yeah. And especially when you have things that are necessary, clothes, food, services. Yeah, the list goes on and on. And there are certain things that, for a certain amount of time, people can do without, but after a while, you're gonna need some assistance.
So what advice would you give to another small business owner?
What advice would I give to another small business owner? just do it, right? If there's something that you're thinking about, right, that's on your mind, don't contemplate it, right? Just put the effort forth in making the action to do it. I think the worst thing that we can do is to not do anything. So just to be able to formulate something tangible from right our sense of mind and just something that we're thinking, I think is one of the greatest things that we can do. So just right sticking with it, keeping that ball rolling, and be your biggest advocate, right? Be your biggest fan. Pat yourself on the back for the small accomplishments. The small ones deserve just as much recognition as the big ones, and be okay failing and starting over.
That's great advice, Toshia. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Thank you for having me.
So how can people find you?
You can find me at tcristal.com. You can find me pretty much the same across all handles, tcristal on Instagram or IG. And you can also email me at raw_crystal, RAW_CHRISTAL at Yahoo. And I would leave my phone number just because I'm old school like that, but I think I'll keep it with the I'll keep it with the email and the IG and my website there.
What's the address of your brick and mortar?
Of course. My brick and mortar is 2911 Fruitvale Ave. And my space there, I am open by appointment. I do have a little shout out right now. I am doing a name your own price on all of my original art. Okay, so all of my original art, small, big. You can literally, right, check out my IG, see if there's some art you like. You can schedule a studio visit. You can come by, see some art, name a price. I'm going to say yes or no, and it's yours. You can feel free to try as many times as you want on as many different art pieces as you like. But I have an abundant amount of art in my studio. I would love for people to be able to take some home, right? Put it on your wall, get some for a friend or a lover or a family member, big or small. And yeah, 2911 Fruitvale.
I love that. Name your own price.
Yep.
Well, Toshia, this has been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This has been so fun.
Thank you for listening to the Townrootz podcast. For more information about the show, to leave comments and connect with the hosts, head over to www.townrootz.com.